This is Jonathan Gillum back with my podcast, The Experts. That's right, folks. The truth has arrived. And now you can take me with you wherever you want, because I'm going to be in your phone, on your computer, anywhere you want to hear it. The truth is now with you. It's been over a year and a half, folks, but we're back.
Hit the pedal to detonate. Blowing up, leave you in my way. Feel the shock when I overtake. Up in smoke at the ones that hate.
We don't have to worry about radio. We don't have to worry about TV. We don't have to be worrying about being censored on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm with you now. That's right, folks. And so now let's get started on this first episode of The Experts. And yeah, I'm producing my own show. I don't even have a producer right now. I'm the producer. It's my show. I'm making it for you. And why? Because just like The Experts before, I am doing this so that you can listen and hear from real experts. People that have actually been there and done things, not just talking heads. And man, we've got to talk about that today. We're going to talk about a lot of things that have occurred since the last time I was on. I figured I would come on here on the first show, and we would talk about how all these things occurred, or things that have occurred from a year and a half ago to now. Because when we went silent, the reason I went silent was because of the censorship. I was reaching almost a million people a night, between 500,000 and a million people a night on Facebook alone. And then once the video cast started getting bigger, for some strange reason, it started getting censored. Like everybody else, we were one of the first people to groups to do an actual show, produced show, just like a regular TV show for news, and it was a real show, and it went from about 1 million a night, 500,000 a night, sometimes 700,000, went down to about 1,300 people being reached with less than 100 people viewing. It was ridiculous. So at that point, you know, after our old mascot, and if you've never listened to The Experts before, and this is your first time, maybe you heard me on the radio, on the Sean Hannity radio show, or on Sirius XM Patriot Channel, maybe you see me on Fox or CNN when I was on CNN I was on CNN for a little bit. Or maybe you've never heard of me, and somebody told you about this new podcast. We used to have a mascot. His name was Rico. I used to have 2 dogs. Jessie, the female dog, she passed away some time ago before we started the show. But Rico was kind of our mascot, and he died about a year and a half ago. And at the same time, I was dealing with this censorship as everybody else was, and it was a hard pill to swallow. I'm a guy who, you know, all the things that I've done, being, you know, in the SEAL teams and being an air marshal and contractor and FBI special agent, doing all these different things, I did them because I was called to do them, and I felt like I was called to the media. I mean, it just happened when I got out of the FBI in 2013. It just kind of happened. I mean, I didn't really strive to be that go-to person that Fox and everybody used to call, but that's what happened. And with that calling, I discovered that the people needed the truth, because I was seeing these things behind the sets and all these different news agencies where, you know, being in government service, and those of you that are listening will tell you that when you're in government service, you pretty much do what you're told, and you just assume that patriotism is out there, although I think a lot of people in service are starting to see that that's not the case. But you're driven to do what's best for the country and to do what you're told. So a lot of things kind of go right over your head. And when I stepped into media, I was kind of shocked at the reality of what the world is all about. It kind of reminded me when I first came to New York City with the FBI at the end of 2005. And, you know, like so many people, I'm not from New York City, and that's where I live and where I've been, and that's where I was stationed in the FBI, and having been from Arkansas, I always thought of Wall Street with these really intelligent men and women, and their suit and ties, and they're straight laced. But that's totally opposite of the way it is once you get here, and you realize that Wall Street people, a lot of them are mathematicians now. They're not really as much a money person as they're a mathematician, and they are computer people, and they do a lot of drugs. They party with a lot of prostitutes, not all of them, but it's a big thing in Wall Street. I was surprised by that when I actually learned about that, about the fast rock star lifestyle that they live. And stepping into media was kind of similar in a way that I was in, as far as the surprise go, not the drugs and prostitutes, but it was a shock to me because it's not about the truth. It's not. It's about, well, a couple things. In some instances, it's about the narrative, and it's about which way you slant politically, and that's what drives the way the media is covered. And quite often, that's the way it is, and that's period the way it is for some of these left-leaning networks. But the other thing is it's entertainment. It really is, and it's. I get it. I get that it's entertainment. It should be entertaining to watch these shows in the evenings that are really opinion shows. But the thing that is interesting about that, and what really kind of shocked me, was the longer I was in TV and radio, the more I realized that the majority of people there have no experience in anything except for talking. That's it. And the people that work behind the scenes, great people. I know some amazing people that work behind the scenes in TV and radio. By and large, they have no experience in anything. And so the problem with that I've seen since I started in 2013 in media was that it was very easy to get away from what the truth is in a subject and allow people that are driven by ideologies or the bigwigs at the networks that are trying to get advertising, and I get it. Again, it's a business. It's easy for the people that are booking people, the people that are producing the shows, to get lost in that fast-paced life of ideology and entertainment to the point where the truth and information or informing people was the last thing they thought about quite often. I'd say the last 3 years, what has really changed in media, I'm going to talk about this as we go along tonight or today, is the people that work behind the scenes have changed. They've changed a lot. And the guests that are on there, the quote-unquote experts, have changed. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what has happened in the news, not in behind the scenes of media, but in the news from the time I left about a year and a half ago to now, and then show you how that's the things that have unfolded are connected in a lot of ways to the evolution of media, and it's not a good evolution that's happening behind the scenes. But I'm going to get to that in a minute. Let's start first, though, by talking about the things that have happened since I walked away from the video cast a year and a half ago, and the things that we've seen that have transpired since then. For instance, James Comey. I was screaming and hollering that James Comey was a criminal, that James Comey, the things that he did were unethical, that he was a narcissist. And there were people in the FBI that I knew that they literally told me at that point in time that I had overreacted, that he was actually a good guy. He was caught up in a bad situation, and some of the things, he was caught between the Clintons and the incoming president, and then the president, President Trump. But the reality was, after Trump fired him, and some things started to be exposed, in the way that it really all started when he spoke for 14 minutes about how Hillary Clinton was guilty of all these things, and although he was minimizing that guilt, and then for 2 minutes he talked about how she didn't really do anything criminal. That kind of spun some people in the Bureau and the FBI that I know, and it got to a point where I got phone calls, especially from a good friend of mine that I really do care about what they think and their analysis of things. And they told me, they literally apologized to me to the point where they were like, next time you host a show, I want to go on there and I want to apologize to you on air. I was like, well, I can't do that. I don't want to risk your career. But the reality was they saw the light. They saw the light. But even since then to now, that light has become much brighter. Comey has exposed himself over and over for being a narcissist. He can't just, I mean, think about it, folks. If you had done something so hideous and you got caught and the whole world saw you, I mean, maybe it's just me, but the last thing I would want is more media coverage. I would try to reinvent myself where I was doing good and could be seen for doing good. But this guy comes out and tries to further the lie. Further his commitment to this deep state. You have Lisa Page, weirdo coming out and trying to sue the Bureau or the DOJ for her screw-ups, blaming the president, saying that he was that he caused her some kind of strife. I don't know exactly what is. Stupid. She should just go away. McCabe leaves, gets fired, and then CNN hires him. And he goes on there. These people are deranged. They believe that they are of a higher caliber of human being, but they're no different than the dirtbag street criminals that we locked up when I was in the FBI. No different. They minimize their wrongdoings in their own brain, and they literally put themselves on a pedestal, this narcissistic, almost psychopathic pedestal. But here's the difference between the dirtbag criminal in the street and McCabe and Comey and even Mueller and Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, that fruitcake. These people all belong to a cabal. And those people tell each other, you're good. You're fighting the good fight. You're doing the right thing. Many politicians in Washington, D.C. are the same way. The majority of people in media are a part of this, at least in the executive and in the reporter. No, I wouldn't know about the reporters, but the host of the show is on the liberal side. And some on the conservative side. Don't think that everybody that works at Fox News is conservative. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. These people have an entourage, I guess. They're entourage for other people are entourage for them, and everybody's telling each other, you're awesome, you're doing God's work, you're this, and it's a lie. They're all crazy. They're all criminal. They all believe that the Constitution is broken or that this system of government is broken. They believe that, we should get rid of the voting process that we have, that the Electoral College is bad and it should be gone. You got Elizabeth Warren that's saying that if she's elected, that's the first thing she's going to go after. All the things that are wrong in this country that are broken, that's the first thing that she's going to go after. That's just about as bad as that knucklehead. I can't even remember his name now. That's how quickly I forget these people. That is running for president, but he's from California and does all those stupid commercials. And he's talking about the first thing he's going to do is try to fix the climate change issue. That's the first thing. You're not going to try to feed children if you got elected. You're not going to try to help the poor. This is the derangement syndrome. It's not just Trump derangement syndrome. What we've seen in the past year and a half since I left is that these people exist in a circle, and they all tell each other they're awesome. They tell each other, they feed their psychosis, they feed their narcissism. And it's pretty amazing when you sit back and you look at it and you see the reality of how big of a cabal this actually is. I mean, just when you look at the media and Washington, D.C. politicians and how much they are intermarried, and I do mean married, it's ridiculous. It's crazy. But these are things that we had a picture or we kind of knew about it before, but when you look, if you sat back and you charted all this stuff out, you would see that from a year and a half ago or 2 years ago until now, they have literally exposed themselves. That's one of the greatest things that this president ever did, knowingly or willingly or unwillingly. He has caused these people who really, when Clinton was doing the stuff with their servers and stuff, that was kind of covert criminal activity. Now they just are right out in the open. They do this whole impeachment process. Listen, that just didn't start, from the time I stopped the video cast to now. They were trying to, or they were saying they're going to impeach the president before he was even in office. But this year alone, this past year, they went through this impeachment process, and it was the most criminal thing I've ever seen in my life. It was crazy. There's no court of law in the country that would ever allow the actions and the behaviors and the non-evidence and the hearsay in their courtroom in this country and still convict somebody or charge somebody. It just goes against everything that the founding fathers intended for this country. But it's been exposed, and they don't care that it's seen. They literally believe, I truly think in their hearts, that they believe they are doing either good, or they are so narcissistic that they're just thinking, oh, we're going to win this, we're going to get this, because narcissists, that's what they think. I heard somebody, I read an article once where a narcissist actually wrote an article. The guy's a psychiatrist, and he said, and he was analyzing himself and the whole thing, and he knew he was a narcissist, but he was talking about how narcissists do amazing things. Amazing, by the way, when I say amazing, they do a lot of the things that everybody says, oh, I'd like to write a book, or I'd like to have all my paintings in an art gallery. And narcissists can do that, but when you go to the art gallery, the paintings aren't that great. They did them. They got them in a gallery, but they're not that great because that's not their objective. It's not mission success. It's energy. Can they get the energy from those around them, good or bad? And quite often that energy is at the expense of others and the people around them, their sanity. So we have seen all this since I left in the video cast. We saw the Mueller report come out. Was nothing. We knew it was going to be nothing. I mean, if you thought that was going to be anything, you're crazy. And there's people that actually do think it was something. It was nothing. I mean, really, you could say it was something because you could have predicted that it was going to be nothing based on the actions, behaviors of the people at the top of the FBI. We knew that it wasn't going to be anything. It was complete runaround for the entire time. I think basically just like the impeachment process, hoping that the president would just fold or that they would find something that they could start the impeachment process with. A.G. Horowitz. I mean, if you knew anything about investigations and you saw what was happening, you would have immediately written that off. And I'll tell you why. And I want you to think about this. I've said this on the radio. Maybe you've heard it. Maybe you haven't. There's a thing called conspiracy. I'm not talking about conspiracy theory where you're like, oh, that person flies a pig or something like that. It's conspiracy in the criminal world is where two or more people get together and they commit a series of crimes in furtherance of whatever their criminal intent is. So let's say you have 5 people and 5 people partake in basically like a mission to overthrow the president, such as the people at the top of the FBI and many of these politicians and the willing participants in the media, right? But let's say it's just 5 people. And they all knowingly take part in this conspiracy to overthrow the president. The interesting thing about this charge and the way that you and I would be charged with this, the way that we would be investigated, is that the Bureau or whatever investigative agency would start looking at this group and they would start to build a spider web or an analyst picture of who all these people are. And then they would start looking at what their intent was. Once they find out their intent, and maybe they would know it because a lot of times you get a complainant that comes in and they say, this is what's going on. And so we go and look at it. The investigators go and look and they see if there's any probable cause to further an investigation. There's no report written. There's no individual where they say, oh, well, this guy, and this girl, and these other 2 people are all involved. And the Bureau or investigating agency doesn't go out and look at each person individually and then write reports on whether or not they're going to charge them for that crime that they did. That's not the way it works. If all 5 of those people have the same intent and they work together knowingly, every crime that is committed by the group, individual or as a whole, every person will be charged with that crime in the conspiracy. So if one person illegally leaks information, if another person tries to affect the ballot box, if another person goes into media and or creates a fake dossier and then takes it in the media and then acts like the media gives it validation, they take it before a potentially corrupt FISA judge or whoever it was that was overseeing that, and then they get that approved and they use that evidence, and one person did that and then another person did something else, all the people, all five of them, of these make-believe people, are going to be charged with all those crimes. So now that you know that, if you didn't know that before, you should sit back, and since it was a video cast to now, you can sit back and you can look at all these people. You can look at Mueller. You can look at Comey. You can look at Peter Strzok. Well, let's just say Comey. Comey, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and McCabe. Let's just look at those people. There's other people that were involved. Many of them have been moved out and put in different places. The SAC of St. Louis, that guy worked directly with McCabe. There's a guy that's on CNN that also worked. These people had parts in it. We know that they had parts in it. But let's just take these people. Comey, McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and you can clearly see that they were communicating. You can clearly see that they were pushing a fake dossier through. You can clearly see that all these things occurred, so you know that they all had the same intent. Probably Hillary Clinton was involved in there. That's why Comey, pushed her right along after that, and didn't prosecute her for that stuff. So then Mueller comes along. Mueller does this. He packs his investigative group of lawyers with leftists. And everybody says, well, Mueller's a Republican. Comey was a Republican. Listen, you got to stop looking at, there's no black and white. You can't fix a light bulb with an ideology. It's the same thing with a Republican Democrat. If you think everything the Republicans that they come up with or stand for is the way you fix everything, you're sadly mistaken. And if you're a liberal and you think that the Democrat Party is going to fix everything because through the way that they believe stuff, you're sadly mistaken. That's not the way the real world works. And the same thing goes with these people. I don't care if Comey or Mueller ever voted Republican. The fact is, when it comes to this president and when it comes to their involvement in a deep state, which is like a fourth branch of government that is unseen, it was not intended by the Founding Fathers for sure, and not something that we vote on. It's people that are ideologically driven, mostly leftists, I would have to say, or careerists that go right along for the ride. They make up this fourth branch. It doesn't matter who they vote for in the election process. Most of those people are picked anyway. So when we look at this whole process that's gone on over the past couple of years, you can now reflect back. You don't have to guess. It's all right there. You can look at it and you can see that they all work together as a conspiracy. I would even throw Horowitz in there, because when Horowitz he did a report. The first thing that guy, let me tell you, if Horowitz, who was the inspector general for the DOJ, if he would have come out with Barr, who I don't trust either, I don't know him, but I don't trust him. I don't have any, I have no, they have to show me that I can trust him. I don't see any Clintons in jail. I don't see Comey and Mueller and Strzok and Page. I don't see them being charged with conspiracy. If Horowitz had come out and said immediately, I'm standing with the Attorney General, Barr, and we are not going to do a report. What we're going to do is open an investigation, a criminal investigation, and we're going to see if Comey and the rest of these people, including Mueller and the Clintons and the media people and John McCain and the Republicans, the never-Trumpers who helped pay and move that fake dossier through, that basically the investigation was built upon. If Horowitz and Barr had stood in front of the American public and said, we're not writing reports, We're going to investigate these people as a conspiracy because we believe there's evidence to show that they worked together as a group of people conspiring to overthrow the president. If they had said that, I wouldn't question a thing about who they are or what they believe. But that's not what happened. That's what would happen to you and I, but that's not what happened with this group of cabal, or this cabal that's in and around Washington, D.C. So I hope that really helps you. It's really interesting. When I started this show today, right before, I wrote an outline, and I started thinking about this, how much had conspired from the time I stopped doing the show until now. And you literally, if you had Analyst Notebook, which costs thousands of dollars, it's a program that we use in the Bureau. I think you can get it on your computer, but it's very expensive. But you can input these people, their connections, their actions, their motivation. You can include all that stuff, and it would literally paint this picture for you. And it's not it wouldn't be a big stretch. I believe that based on my training experience and what I've seen, that the evidence shows these people worked as a conspiracy and should be charged as such. Not really going to see that. Why? Well, the Founding Fathers intended for there to be 3 branches of government. And they really, to tell you the truth, they wanted there to be 4. I mean, the people, the American people, and the power of the people, that is really the first branch of government. I mean, government is made up of the people, sort of. I mean, there's a system, just like that whole system of the people in Hollywood that were getting their kids into colleges that they weren't smart enough to get into. There's the same system for people going to D.C. I mean, these people that get into Harvard and then go into D.C., there's been more bad policy, destructive policy written in this country by Harvard graduates than any other group of people from any other college. Ivy League college in general just kind of breeds these people, and it creates a hedge. And if you know what a hedge is, it's not just a plant. When they talk about like a hedge firm, what they're talking about, like let's say you had gas. Let's take gasoline, for instance. Let's say you had a lot of money and a lot of places to store gasoline. When gas was at its cheapest, you can go and you can buy a ton of gas. And that way, when gas gets expensive, you have extra gas that you bought at a cheap price. You're hedging against the price of the gas. You can do the same thing with the stocks. When the stocks are very cheap, you can go out and you can buy a ton of stock for gasoline or oil. And then when it goes up, you have those stocks in your pocket, and you're hedging against the rise and fall of the price of gas and the rise and fall of the price of the stocks. It's the same thing with these people that go to Harvard or these other Ivy League schools, and then they go to Washington, D.C. They're like cookie cutters in who they are, in their resumes, and they go bing, bang, boom. Next thing you know, what would take us 20 years to gain experience, those of us regular folk, to get to that point and to run for an office or to make enough money to run for office. These people go from high school to Ivy League school to Harvard Law to senator or congressman. Just bing, bang, boom. Silver bullet. Now they're making laws and running the country and running it amok because they have no experience. They're no different than the people that are behind the scene in media, to tell you the truth. So when we look at all this stuff, again, that's transpired, I'm sorry I keep going back and saying that, but the stuff that's transpired in the past year and a half, 2 years, there's a clear picture. And you should start looking at that picture. And what my goal is over for, I don't know, the extended period of time, I'm going to keep doing this podcast as long as I can. But I'm going to try my hardest to have experts on here to help explain some of this. It's not the only thing we're going to talk about, but from time to time we're going to go back to this, and we're not just going to do it like they do on the media shows or the TV shows that you watch every night, and they cover this stuff constantly. I want to hear from operators. I want to hear from people that look at this stuff and analyze it from an operational standpoint. And it's almost, I don't like, because I'm an investigator, I don't like waiting for something to happen so that I can go back and look at it and analyze it. I'd like to be able to forward think it and then pick it apart before it actually, to keep people from doing these things in the future. But that's not always going to be the case. It's not going to be that easy to do that. in the political arena and media arena. But that's what we're going to try to do in this podcast. One of the things that we're going to try to do is go through and bring on experts that were operational in these fields, and we're going to discuss the difference between the cabal and you, and the difference between the way they would be treated or are treated and the way that a criminal conspiracy would be treated. And I think it's going to help you to forward guess what their next maneuvers would be or what they're going to do. Although Nancy Pelosi has me completely, I don't know what the heck she's doing holding on to this impeachment. They worked so hard to get it, lying and causing all this ruckus, and then they didn't do anything with it. So I'm eager to see what tricks she's going to pull out of her witch's hat next. Now, I want to talk and kind of roll this into the family tree of the deep state. There's a lot more to this than we're going to get out in this podcast, but this is kind of an overview of this family tree of this cabal of the deep state. You have the media. You have politicians. These are people that you see the most. The media, I think, has become probably the biggest player in this whole thing. Not that the media avidly goes out and sets the narrative. The narrative is spread by the media, but the politicians and big money people, they're the ones that really probably create the narrative more than anything. But the reality is many of the politicians get out and go work in the media, and big money people own the media. So you see how this is kind of a soup of these different groups of people. I like to look at it as a family tree because it kind of goes up and branches out in different directions, but it's that center of the tree that is actually uniformed and where all these different branches come from. Over the past couple of years, one thing that we've definitely seen the rise, both in the liberal community, in the media, politicians, and big money, actually, to tell you the truth, and even in so-called conservative groups. They're fake conservatives, paleo conservatives. It's the dumbest name I've ever heard. Some of these weirdos are anti-Semites. They're all within the age of between 30-something and in college, or maybe even younger. They're very David Hoggish, but they say that they're conservatives. They're also isolationists. So they're kind of like libertarians, like a libertarian, but a little bit liberal, but staunch on other views. And the whole thing with this family tree of these people, and why I say that some of the big money is actually younger people. One of the biggest problems we have in this country is that we have some very young billionaires. We have some very young politicians. The media has been inundated behind the scenes with very, very, very young bookers and producers. And those people will get out and then become like, not agents, but booking agents. And so the people that they're bringing in and the producers are putting up there, they literally believe the only people they have to talk to now are the youth, and they think the only way they're going to talk to young people is by putting shiny objects in front of them to say things that are going to get people angry or sad or happy, not just the truth. So what you have is really over the past 3 years, I mean, watch all the networks. You're not going to see many experts. You're not. You're going to see people who are journalists, they call themselves, or writers. You're going to see people who are editors of an online magazine. I don't know what the qualifications are for that. I guess any of us could be considered the editor of an online magazine. It's not like they have to have a printing house and like heaven forbid, they do any real editing. But these are the people that they're bringing on as experts. And the people that are bringing them on are just as young and just as incompetent. And they're really concerned with this advertising and the entertainment value and their ideology. Those are really the three things that are pushing this media. And these big money people like the Facebook groups and all these young people in Silicon Valley. And these people that call themselves conservatives but aren't. The activists that are the leftists in this country that say it's okay to be communists. I've heard young people argue that communism is just as good, if not better than capitalism or a free market or a republic. They don't even know what a republic is. They think we're a democracy. We're a republic. They don't know that. And they'll argue with you and say, well, they can coexist. Well, no, they can't. In fact, it's against the law. As you can, my good friend Louis Gomer was talking about on the radio with me one day. There's actually laws in place that say that you can't have other forms of government. Why isn't anybody doing anything with those laws? Because they're ideologically bent and they don't care about the Constitution. But I wish I could have faith in the young people of this country. But I don't. And I think that they've proven why you can't have faith in them. It is remarkable, in fact, how egotistical and how much these young people think that they know. That they'll look at a veteran or look at a 20-year teacher or look at somebody who has done all these incredibly difficult things, climbed their way out of poverty and paid for their own college and they will look at that person and say, the world is messed up because of people like you. Just get out of the way and let us run it. They think it's like Instagram, that they can just post that it's a happy new year and it's a happy new year. But that's not reality. But that's what they think. And that's who makes up a big part of media, of this what I call the new youth on both the left and this. Remember when I say this over and over again, they're not really conservative. They call themselves the new conservatives. They're not conservative. If anything, some of them are libertarian, but they really have. Well, here's the commonality amongst all these people. Okay, they don't have any experience in life. Many of them have not gone to college. Not that college is the end-all, be-all. But they don't even have experience in trying to in learning how to learn. And what happens is their emotions dictate what they think is true, along with their ideologies that they've been indoctrinated with through the years and years of crazy leftist teachers and professors. And sometimes even clergy. These young people don't really know much about anything, and they will not listen to people that actually do. And this is a perpetual circle or cycle of events that are taking place that by the time they reach their 30s or their 40s, they don't know how to find the truth. And in fact, they don't even understand that that is what you should seek. So we have gotten into this weird thing, especially in media, where that's who media is targeting, because that's their target audience. And instead of targeting them and saying, this is a truth, this is what's going on, they just, they'll go on their web you can go on any of these websites and talk about, oh, so-and-so had a nipple slip last night at the Academy Awards. That's going to be the news. And then next to it, you'll see that, the president took out one of the deadliest killers in the world from Iran. They'll put those two stories right next to each other because they think that's what they have to give young people. But here's the truth. If you give young people the truth, and stop with this nonsense. Listen, you may not like Roger Ailes and what he stood for. I've watched all these shows, and it was a shit show. That's what it was. That's the best way to say it. But the guy knew how to do entertainment and how to make sure that he reported the news. I mean, the left can say whatever they want about Fox News. I was at all the news agencies 4 years ago. I was in all of them. And when I saw behind the scenes at Fox and the questions that I was asked, not given at Fox News, were fair and balanced. I mean, the evening shows were more conservative. But here's what I knew this already from my own life walk, but conservative values will lead you to the truth if you're truly conservative in your values. You're slow to change. You analyze things. You're economically. You don't overspend. You don't promise free stuff when you can't give it. And this type of discussion on this level will bring you to the truth. On the other side, I go to all these other news media outlets, and it was crazy. It was crazy. They live in a fantasy world. All they were concerned about was their special interests. Were these people being treated fairly, or did they get a win in the Supreme Court for something that really could have been worked out in the society? They, want women in special forces, for instance. I would go on there and say, well, listen, I'm not against women doing special forces, but they need their own teams, their own training. Let them, if there's enough of them, don't just do it because 2 women want to be in special forces. That's not the way the military works. The military is a warfighting machine. But that's not the way that the people in the other media, this is behind the scenes talking to them. They'd say, no, we have to have women in special forces. I'd say, we have to? There's nothing in the warfighting machine that we're building that says it's going to be better if we have women in it, that we're going to be able to kill more bad guys. That's why the military exists. But listen, I'm open to using anybody if they're good at killing, to put them in the military and let them do their thing. If we have even 5 women that can work as a team and train as a team, then we train them alone and let them come to their standards and figure out what they're good at. They're not as strong as the men that are going to be going to SEAL training. They're not going to be able to pull out a 230 or 240 pound warrior who's dead weight by themselves. They're not going to be able to do it. And maybe you'll have one woman who could do it, but you're not going to have a whole team. That's not, unless you feed them a freaking butt ton of steroids, they're not going to be able to go and do that. So you create their own team and their own training with their own Spartan lifestyle. That's a whole part of the military training nobody talks about, the Spartan lifestyle. Taking everything away from you and down to nothing. And so you have to pay a price for God and country. Safety of your family. But it's you, nothing else. I mean, I remember going to Ranger School, and we'd go in the middle of nowhere. They just have a bathroom set up there, and we go sit in this bathroom, and there's no stalls. And you look down on the right side, there's about 30 toilets, and on the left side, there's like 30 urinals. And everything is squeezed together. So you're sitting down there. If you have to go to the bathroom, sit down. You're a guy, you know what I'm talking about. You sit down there. You're like literally practically sitting on each other while you're going to the bathroom. The other guys are in the urinal right in front of you. Now, they don't do that to torture you. But those things are made to minimal standards. We have to have this many in there. We have this much room, this much lumber. Let's put these all in there. Don't worry. We're not worried and concerned about stalls, nothing like that. These guys, they're only going to be in here for enough time to go to the bathroom and get out. That's the Spartan lifestyle. That's what the military is. That's how you train warriors. You don't give them all the fancy gear and tell them that they're special and powder their butts. That you literally, you're bleeding in training more than most people bleed in a lifetime for their country. And if women wanted to be in the military, then they could have their own thing set up and they could go through their own training separate from men. Because when you combine men and women, you're going to combine desire, or you're going to control, in some cases, hatred, and it's going to cause a lot of problems. It sounds like I'm digressing, but I'm not. The reality is that's what I would see, and I would try to have this discussion in the background with other people at other news outlets, and they were so leftist that they could not see the rationale in that discussion. Why? Because they're emotional, and they base their truths on emotion, whereas conservatives, by and large, base their truths on ethics and morals, not emotion. And ethics and morals will always lead you to truth. But what we see now in the young people is that they think they're conservative, but they're really not. I would not have been, 3 days ago, I would have told you that I don't think anti-Semitism is that big of a deal in this country. And by and large, I don't think it is the way that the media portrays it. It's not skinheads. It's not, that has nothing. There's very few skinheads out there that are killing Jewish people in the United States. By and large, what it is are people like these paleo conservatives who hate Israel, and they think that Israel is the cause of all the problems in the Middle East. And they don't realize the link that the United States has with Israel and that the Jews have with Christians. I don't think many Jews realize that either, to tell you the truth. But it's a beautiful connection that we have. It's an amazing connection that we have. Jesus, who we believe was the Savior, was a Jew. And our you look back at the Bible and our New Testament, which the Jews don't believe in. And this isn't a rag on Jews or Judaism. I'm talking about the beautiful connection that we have. You know, Jesus, throughout the New Testament, participated in all the holidays and all the cultures and things that Jews do. And I have always held a big part in my heart for Israel, regardless of how many people are atheists, because a lot of people in Israel are atheists. Regardless of their politics, a lot of people don't like their politics, but I have a special place in my heart for that relationship with the Christians and Judaism, and a special place in my heart with the United States and Israel, the country of Israel, which are both God's establishment of freedom in the world. Those two countries. It's amazing, the story of those two countries and how God secreted freedom of speech, service to country and to God through both of those countries. I mean, there's other free countries, England and things, but the United States is very unique, and Israel is very unique, more than any other countries. And so these new, young paleo-conservatives that are not really conservatives, they hate Israel and they hate Jewish people. And I had never seen that before until this past weekend, which would have been January 4th and 5th. And it was amazing. On Twitter, I was, I went after somebody on Twitter, and this whole thing was revealed. And it was shocking to me. I'm not going to lie to you. It was shocking. I did not know that this type of anti-Semitism, in all my experience and all the things that I've done, I know that there's people out there that don't agree with Israel and they don't like them. They say this and that. But the vile things that I saw on the level that I saw it was shocking to me. And the fact that many of these individuals have appeared on Tucker Carlson's show, some of them, not many of them, some of them, and are associated with the Daily Caller. And maybe those aren't the people that actually said the vile things, but they were certainly hearting some of the things that these other people were saying. And those people were putting hearts on Twitter and retweeting the things that those people from the Daily Caller and some of these other online publications were saying. I found that very, very shocking. Very shocking. And it all stemmed from a interview that Tucker Carlson did with this guy named Kurt Mills from this new publication, quote-unquote conservative publication. And it was ridiculous. This guy's like 20-something years old. I'm not talking about 27, 28. This guy's like 22. And that's who he had on to discuss how bad of a decision it was by the president to go after and kill this Iranian general, Soleimani. That's his expert. But that's the way the media's gone. I think Tucker Carlson's gone to the extreme, though. And I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But I want to wrap this part up right here. We'll talk about this much more in the coming episodes. But this family tree, you need to concentrate on this, right? The media, politicians, big money, and this new youth that is all intertwined, both in the left and this quote-unquote new conservative, these libertarians, as I call them. It's a frightening thing for the future of this country. Frightening. Because they refuse to listen to anything that experts say, and there are big money adults and there are special interest adults and people who are 50, 60 years old. You got George Soros, all these types of people, and they're heavily involved in this as well. So keep your eyes peeled for this stuff, and it's easy to identify. If you see a 20-something-year-old reporter or writer on one of these news shows, whether it's a conservative or not news show, you should take a step back and say, who is booking that person, who's the producer that's allowing this, and is that host that has a say-so in every person that comes on that show, is that host embedded with these people? Is that who they think are the experts? Or are they just allowing this ideology to come on because they agree with them, or they think that it's going to sell advertising because young people are going to tune in? Either way, it's bad. Doesn't matter if it's a conservative network or not. And you should be very aware of this. Now, what we do about this in the future, we'll be discussing that in later episodes. But first of all, before you decide what you're going to do, you have to be aware of what's going on. You have to know that this stuff's happening. Now, let's talk. This is part 2 of the show, and this is going to go a little bit faster. I talked about the media and the new youth, okay? But you yourself, as I just said there, you have to start looking for truth. You have to start seeking the truth. And just like I've shown you with how we look back at the couple of years since Comey and all this stuff happened, how we can now look at it and see reality. I mean, don't use ideology when you're looking for the truth. You can use morals and ethics, and you can use laws, and you can look at it. You will find the truth. And that's what you need to start looking for. If you went into a church, if you're a Christian, or if you're Jewish and you go into a synagogue, let's say you're Christian, you go into a church, or you're Catholic, you go into your Catholic church, right? And you see a priest, and you're sitting down there and you're listening to the teachings, and they're teaching something that is a bastardization of what Christ said or what's in the Torah. You should get up and walk out of that, and you should stop right before you walk out, and you should turn around and you should say to the whole congregation, that man is blasphemous and he is teaching false truths. They are a false prophet, and if you stay in here, it's on you. You're going to suffer the consequences for following a false prophet. And I would walk out of there. Don't be afraid. Do it. Because it's the same thing when you're watching the news or when you're having a conversation with people. If they immediately start out with opinion and immediately start out with ideology, and they're trying to convince you that you can fix a problem, or you can judge a problem, or judge a leader based on your ideology, well, they are no different than that preacher, that priest, or that rabbi that are bearing false witness and teaching blasphemous, wrong things. And you should distance yourself from them. If they're a TV host, get away from them. If it's a news media outlet and that's constantly what they're doing, don't ever turn on that channel again. If it's somebody on radio and you're hearing them and you're listening, maybe they have a different of opinion. Maybe their facts are a little skewed. But if they go down a road, that is opinion. And if they go down a road saying things that do not have factual basis, don't ever go back to that show again. Turn it off. And if everybody does that, before long, those people will be gone. Hopefully. Unless they're just being blindly supported by some of these big money weirdos out there. Because ultimately, here's another thing that really is hurting this country tremendously. People, young and old alike, disregard historical lessons. They disregard it. They don't look at the founding fathers and why they created this country and why they created the Bill of Rights, why they wrote the Constitution the way they did, and the Declaration of Independence. Many people believe that the Constitution and Declaration of Independence are the same thing. They're not. I challenge you, go do your research. You have to start looking for real experts. That's what I'm going to bring to you in this show. But you should also look for it in media. And if you can't find the experts, look at the headlines and then do your research. Don't just think that the headline and what is written is the end-all be-all truth or the story. Quite often, if there's something about law enforcement, go ask a cop and say, what do you think about this? Is this the truth? You're going to be surprised at the reality of that. Or let's say the military, and I was talking to somebody today. I read on one of these news outlets, they said that John Bolton is going to testify against the president. Then I see on another news outlet that they said that John Bolton was willing to testify in the impeachment process. He didn't say he was going to testify against the president. Not that I could hear. I never heard a soundbite. I didn't hear it anyway if it's out there. But that's what this other news media outlet was saying, that he's going to testify against the president. And you'd probably be surprised at what news outlet said that. So make sure that you're looking at these things. If you have to listen to this podcast again to get this whole data dump into your this data dumped into your brain, then listen to it again. It's going to benefit you in the long run. And hopefully what you'll take out of this first episode of The Experts is a better understanding of the reality of how this stuff works, and a better understanding of where we all fall short. Whether it be with our walk with God, whether it be in our emotional decisions that we make, we all fall short. And I think that the better understanding we have of events, the longer we take to understand these things slowly and divisively, we will start to see the reality of what's going on. Now, I'm going to play a clip from Fox News, from Tucker Carlson's show tonight. And I'm going to analyze this. It's going to be the last thing we do here on this episode. And I'm going to show you how I look at things based on my training experience, which you can do as well. You don't have to have all the training experience that I have. You listen to it. You can add. There's plenty of people out there that you probably don't even realize, are trained in military or law enforcement. You write me an email. If I can answer it, I'll answer it at jonathantgilliam.com. Although the website's under repair, but you can still reach me at jonathantgilliam.com. But let's play this little few minutes of Tucker Carlson analyzing the Iranian issue, where the president has now killed this Iranian general who was attacking, or the general was organizing the attack that was being taken out on our embassy in Iraq. This is the same guy that's responsible for over 600 American soldiers' deaths through proxy wars. And what that is where another country pays and funds or trains the combatants in another war. They don't actually fight it. They just support it and let other people fight it. That's a proxy. And that seems to be the way most people fight wars these days, which is, I'll talk about that in a minute, but that's one of the reasons why we have not solved the war on crime, or the war on terror, or the war on drugs or immigration, is because people politicians and special interest people don't realize that in order to fix something, you have to crush it. You have to have mission-oriented mindset, and you have to go out and you have to have a strategic plan to fix it completely. You can't just half-ass war. You can't half-ass the drug issue or anything like that, which people like Tucker Carlson believe that you can. So let's listen to this soundbite here. Let me pull this up, and you're going to see. I'm going to go through it and talk your way through it. So let's listen to what Tucker has to say.
But first, if you were at an airport over the weekend, you may have seen American troops on the move, leaving their families on their way to the Middle East. Now, just a month ago, not 1 in 100 Americans was thinking about Iran. Now they're on the brink of war. In Washington, that is considered an upgrade, indeed a massive improvement. It's harder to get rich and powerful in Washington during peacetime, so our leaders have a built-in bias for war. And so they descended on television studios over the weekend to describe in detail the kind of violence they're prepared to wreak on a country very few of them know anything about.
Okay. First and foremost, most of us know quite a bit about Iraq and where this incident happened, and we know a tremendous amount about Iran. I could ask almost anybody I know, what do you know about Iran, and they would be able to say that they're trying to get nuclear reactors. Most likely they're trying to build nuclear weapons. They declared war on the United States 40 years ago in 1979. They've killed massive amounts of American soldiers overseas. They've assisted and paid for or taken part in the planning of terrorist attacks on the United States. According to Tucker Carlson, nobody knows anything. We know very little about Iran. That's not true. That's not true.
Example is Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina.
If the Iranians hit American targets and American interests and American allies, we will respond militarily. If they hit us again, then I would not want to be working in an Iranian oil field, because I think the president is determined to bring this regime to its knees if they continue to be provocative.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with what he just said. I agree wholeheartedly. The president should hold anyone accountable that injures our well-being. And I'm not talking about fighting some war to win the hearts and minds in another country. If our embassy is being attacked, there should be a price to pay. If somebody is directly threatening the United States, which Iran has, and they've said that they declared war on us 40 years ago, we should take that seriously. And if they keep it up, we should pound their asses into the ground. That's the way we would have done it prior to 1947, when, for some reason, we went from the Secretary of War and the Department of War to the Department of Defense and the Secretary of Defense. I want you to think about that. Who do you want protecting your national security and making sure that you're safe? Somebody who is a Secretary of Defense or somebody who is a Secretary of War? Do you want a Department of War going to war for you, or do you want a Department of Defense? You see, this is not something that just happened. And this is why, the true reason why, we have not won a war since World War II. We've fought plenty. We've had several stalemates, won a lot of battles, but we have not won a war. And that does include the war on drugs. And I do believe immigration is a war. Illegal immigration. Let's go on with the soundbite.
Meanwhile, the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, assured reporters that the U.S. seeks, quote, de-escalation with Iran, and then just moments later suggested the U.S. might bomb dozens of sites inside Iran itself.
Now, one thing about Tucker Carlson that I got to say that has now started to annoy me, where I used to really, I've met Tucker Carlson, talked to him several times. He was actually a reporter at the Arkansas Democrat Gazette in Little Rock. I'm from Arkansas. He was there during the Clinton era, which I find very odd now. But I had, when he got his show, I was very happy that they gave Tucker a show. I thought Tucker was a great conservative voice. Listen, one thing about me, I'll admit when I'm wrong. I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong, because I usually am right. And the reason I'm usually right is because I don't talk about stuff that I don't know. If I want to debate somebody on something, I'm going to go learn what it is, and I'm going to, what the subject is, and I'm going to try to make an educated decision before I go out and debate somebody about something. I was wrong about Tucker Carlson. I was wrong. And I saw the reality of how bad that era was this past weekend when I got inundated by these weirdo fake conservatives, these paleo conservatives. So listening to him now aggravates me. I don't know if you can tell that.
President Trump is saying that there are 52 sites that the U.S. would target if Iran retaliates. How is that consistent with what you say is your message of de-escalation?
Entirely consistent.
Threatening to bomb mainland Iran?
The Iranian leadership needs to understand.
Okay, so that was not Tucker. That's where he's playing a soundbite of another show. But that person is an idiot. When she's like, you're threatening to bomb mainland Iran? Well, let's see here. Okay. They send a general, the same general who's killed hundreds of our troops. We don't really actually know the number, but we know for sure it's over 600. That's responsible for funding or helping train, and in some case leading operations to kill American soldiers. We know that. We know that he was in Iraq leading what they call a protest, really an attack. It's not really, they call it a protest in the media. It was an attack. When you look at the embassy and you look at the damage, that was an attack. Okay, it was a protest nonsense. It's stupid. It was an attack. He was there leading it, and he got taken out. If they do anything to us, we should eliminate that enemy. Just like we would have prior to 1947, when we had the Secretary of War. This idiot on this show it's crazy. This is like a bad dream. You got Tucker Carlson saying these idiotic things, and then he plays a soundbite trying to make Mike Pompeo look bad, but yet this other idiot on this, I'm going to play it again real quick, what she says. It's completely stupid. It's the dumbest question I've heard in a long time in media. It's just dumb. Let me play it again.
That attack
Is that consistent with what you say is your message of de-escalation?
entirely consistent.
Threatening to bomb mainland Iran?
The Iranian leadership needs to understand
Stupid.
that attacking Americans is not cost-free. To take a terrorist off the battlefield does not increase the risk of terror. The risk of terror is increased by appeasement.
Perfectly said. You can't just attack and expect it to be cost-free. And you can't always worry that standing up for yourself is going to cause a repercussion. You can't always worry about that. And you know what really actually eliminates the worry? If you're the mightiest military fighting machine in the world in history of mankind, and you understand that, that's a big help, because then you can sit back and say, these people need to be spanked. You spank them. If they come back at you again, you say, they need to be eliminated. They're a problem for everybody. Or maybe just say they should be eliminated. I think they should be eliminated myself. I think Mike Pompeo was perfect. Let's see what Tucker Carlson says about this.
The risk of terror is increased by appeasement. It's a good line, and it may be true. Probably is
It is true, Tucker.
true. Of course, the risk of terror is also increased by bombing other people's countries. That is
Other people's countries. Do you see not only the stupidity in this, but his narrative? That other person was with CNN. Tucker's narrative is exactly the same as hers. His questions and his demeanor is exactly the same way that she was. And Tucker says he's conservative. And he says that he's like an isolationist. He believes like Ron Paul that we shouldn't be going out there and attacking other countries or doing these people. If you're a libertarian and you listen to this, that's not reality. It's like Vegas, right? I speak a lot in these stories, and I hope that's okay, and I hope you get that. But if I take you to Vegas, and you look at a wall and you say, wow, that's a beautiful marble wall, you very well may be able to hit that with a baseball bat and go right through it, because it's probably not marble. It's Vegas. Everything's fake there. It's probably just a rock that's painted to look like marble. That's the same concern. That's the way the reality is. If you're a libertarian, that's the reality of the world, right? You can't live in with a Vegas mindset, going around and thinking, they attacked us, but nobody got killed, so let's just not do anything, and maybe they'll leave us alone. They're not going to leave us alone. Bad people don't leave you alone. Look, here's another example. You're a little kid, right? You go to school every day. The big bully goes around. He punches you, shoves you into a locker, takes your lunch money, threatens you, says he's going to be back tomorrow to do the same thing. How many times are you going to let that happen? I don't care how little you are. You go up behind that guy when he's not looking, and you punch him right in the chin as hard as you can, and you prepare yourself. You go out and train, learn how to fight. And when it comes down to it, he tries to take your lunch money, you either hit him there or you preemptively take him out. I'm not saying that kids should go and beat other people up. But if you're a kid in school and this is happening, you have to prepare yourself. You shouldn't just go to school every day and bend over backwards and wait to be beat up. You just shouldn't. Go train. I don't care. I've seen some of the most vicious warriors in the world that were tiny men. But they scare me. That's how dangerous they are. They're scary. Doesn't matter how big. Sometimes it matters how big you are. But the point of this the thing I'm saying here is, if you keep allowing it to happen, it's going to increase more and more. Bullies don't back off. They don't feel bad. They don't come to their senses. This is in the movies. You can't sit there and give a good speech and the bad guy will put his head down and walk away and you get the girl. That's not the way the real world works. The world that this is happening in has to do with death and destruction. And if they get a nuclear weapon, it's not going to be like Kim Jong-un, where he sits back and makes threats and then smokes his cigarettes and hangs out with his harem of women. I don't know what he does. But he's not as much of a threat. He is a threat, mostly to South Korea. But Iran is a real threat. They get a nuclear weapon, they're going to probably attack Israel. Or if they get a nuclear weapon and rockets that can reach the United States, they would probably attack the United States. That's how delusional and weird that they are. And you have to take that seriously. Islam should take that seriously. Islam should be taking part in all this stuff. I've long said that the majority of problems that we have in the Middle East, I would say all of them, are because of fundamental Islam. The fundamental aspect of Islam, these ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Iran, the Saudi Arabia, really, in a lot of ways, very, very fundamental in their beliefs. They cannot assimilate in the real world. I know many Muslims. I have great friends who are Muslims in New York, and they assimilate perfectly. They practice their religion. They're not trying to conquer the world. But fundamental Islam was different. People who practice fundamental Islam see things differently. They want regional domination and they want global domination. That's what they want. And we have to realize that in the world. It's not a fake world. And here's the thing. I'm not saying anything bad about the Islamic religion, right? I don't feel one way or the other about that, except for the fact that they could fix the problem in a second if they wanted to. And I tell my friends that are Muslims, if you all wanted this nonsense to stop, Islam could say it's going to stop right now. Terrorism could stop. They could devise a plan, a way of reporting if somebody's being fundamental. It's not radicalized like they always say in the news. It's fundamentalized. And if they're talking about jihad or stuff, and then they go in and deal with it that way. And they could deal with it. They could fix this. They could fix a lot of the problem. But we shouldn't wait for countries like Iran to attack us before we act. Otherwise, we'll be just like that kid getting beaten up every day in school for his lunch money and never preparing himself, never working out, never taking a positive look at himself and saying, I can be a dangerous person. You have to believe that in yourself. We have the most mighty military force in the history of mankind. Yeah, it's made up of young people. I was one of them, and I wanted to be there. And these people on these paleo conservatives, not real conservatives, I keep saying that, were saying on Twitter, why don't you enlist? Well, I was an officer, first of all, and I would go back in a heartbeat if I could. My legs would probably fall off, though, having to compete with these young bucks in the SEAL teams. But I would love to go. I never got to go to war. I did FID missions in Central South America the whole time. It sucked. I was trained to be a warrior and never got to go to war. And many of the people I know that were trained the same as me did go to war. They went to a war zone. They didn't even get in fights. It's something that's in our blood. We want that. And I would gladly go over there. But I'm not a war hawk. I'm not trying to start war. But I will tell you, if we wanted this problem to stop, we could stop it. We wouldn't have these endless wars. We wouldn't have these, everybody's, I'm so sick of war. We're not in war. We have people in war zones, and they get killed because we don't fight the war properly. That's really what this boils down to. Let's listen to Tucker.
Indisputably true. It's hard to remember now, but as recently as last week, most people didn't consider Iran an imminent threat. Iranian saboteurs were not.
That is potentially the stupidest thing I've ever heard. This guy who has a TV show, a national TV show that people believe. I was having this debate this weekend with somebody who says, oh, Tucker Carlson, he is conservative. He's smart. Tucker Carlson is what we call a journalist. Okay, he's got no experience in anything else. He's talking out of his ass when he starts going into this tactical realm. He knows nothing about anything. He certainly, to that comment, doesn't know the reality of what most people think about Iran. You can ask people what they think about Iran. They're going to say dangerous, psychopathic. Massive amounts of Americans have been taken hostage and declared war on us 40 years ago. Get this idiot.
Acts of terror in our cities. Oh, but our leaders tell us they were about to any second, and that's why we struck first. What's so striking?
Yeah, they were. They were attacking our embassy, you idiot.
how many people appear to accept this uncritically. Just the other day, you remember, our intel agencies were considered politically tainted and suspect. Certainly on this show they were, and will be for quite some time.
Yes, I agree.
Keep in mind, these are the people who invented excuses to spy on the Trump campaign.
I agree.
They didn't like Donald Trump's foreign policy views.
That's true.
And they're the ones who pretended he was a Russian agent in order to keep him from governing.
Absolutely true.
Russiagate?
Yep.
Our friends at the intel community did that.
I agree.
By the way, these are the same people who lied about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction way back in 2002, and by doing that,
most likely agree,
got us into an utterly pointless war that dramatically weakened our country.
And I agree with that. I agree that that Iraq and Iran were pointless wars. I think that the enemy, as I've just said a minute ago, and I've openly said this, is fundamental Islam. I tell my Muslim friends that. I don't hide it. It's not any type of a racial slur. It's a fact. And we, after 9/11, 2001, we did not go to war against fundamental Islam, and we went to war for some reason in Iraq. I still don't know why we went in Iraq. And we went into Afghanistan, into a region where nothing really exists except for poppy, which is very interesting, but that's a whole nother conspiracy thing I don't want to get into right now. But we didn't really do anything to stop this fundamental cancer that's running through the veins of Islam. We didn't do anything to stop that. We went and fought skirmishes with warlords and different terrorist groups, and we said, well, that's Al-Qaeda. We got to conquer them. We pretty much decimated them. Well, okay, so that we have ISIS and the Taliban. We got to conquer them. Well, we didn't conquer them. One reason why is because they don't wear a uniform like a regular country's military. So it's very difficult to conquer them because it's guerrilla warfare. So what they do, they decided, well, let's win the hearts and minds. You're not going to win the hearts and minds of psychopathic fundamentalists. You're not. And we didn't. So I agree with Tucker on this part. But this is where he goes back off the deep end. He said that stupid thing a minute ago as though Americans don't know how dangerous Iran is. And now let's listen to this.
People pushing conflict with Iran are the same people who did that. It seems like about 20 minutes ago we were denouncing these very people as the deep state and pledging never to trust them again without verification.
Now, you see, this is where he's conflating issues that have nothing to do with either one. The deep state is not the one that made the decision to go and kill Soleimani, this Iranian general. That was the president. And actually, the deep state is totally opposite of what Tucker's talking about. The deep state are the people that you see bitching and complaining and making him, this guy, this general, this killer, this butcher, this terrorist, they're making him out to be almost like he was an innocent person that was wrongfully killed by our military, directed by the President of the United States. That's the deep state. Tucker's got it all wrong, or he's purposely saying this. I'm not sure which one it is, but either way, it's stupid. And it is an injustice to the American people and should not be on Fox News.
Now, for some reason, we do seem to trust them implicitly. And
the other thing is, his voice drives me crazy. It used to drive me crazy on his show because he would pull people to the very edge where you're like, yes, Tucker, destroy this weirdo leftist. And then he would laugh and say, thanks for coming on the show. And that was it. And I always found that very strange that he would have these people on there, give them a voice, but wouldn't destroy them. It kind of validates the way that I feel now. He just aggravates me because he's just another one of these opinionated, no experience, emotional. I don't know if it's leftist or this fake conservative or libertarian, as I've coined that term. But either way, it shouldn't be. He should not have a TV show where he's airing and spewing this opinionated crap that is not founded in conservative values or truth.
Completely. In fact, we believe whatever they tell us, no matter how outlandish. Iran did 9/11, they're telling us.
This guy's such a knucklehead. He doesn't even realize that 9/11 2012 is what most people have been talking about, not 9/11 2001. The embassy that was attacked in Libya was attacked by basically fundamental Muslims the same way. And 4 Americans were killed, and people don't want that to happen again. The president stopped that from happening again. Now, he's talking about some articles in the New York Times. I don't know what it was. It was an op-ed. I don't know. I'd have to read it. But he's saying, and he's going to go on to say right here, that there's no proof that Iran had anything to do with 9/11 2001. Now, I don't know if Iran had anything to do with it necessarily. Nor does Tucker. Nor does the FBI or the CIA. There's so many conspiracies out there, and there's so many underhanded intel people in this world now that it's hard to get any truth out of anything. But not according to Tucker. While he insults us and the intel community for being underhanded and untrustworthy, for saying this is the truth when it's not, he then goes and does the exact same thing based on opinion and emotion.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that. 15 of the 19 hijackers were from Sunni Saudi Arabia. None were from Shiite Iran. But if you say so, Mr. Unnamed CIA official, I'm happy to send my kid to the Middle East a week after Christmas on the basis of your anonymous, unverified leak to the New York Times.
Okay, here's another thing. Tucker's actions have become more and more like the left. Talk very fast, get very angry, and then say stupid stuff like that, like, oh, well, we'll send our kids over a week after Christmas. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's on Christmas Day. If our facilities are being attacked and our people are threatened, we should retaliate. We should be going full force. I've been saying this for a long time, for well over a year, that this president needs to go to Iran and bomb them into oblivion. I don't even care if we put any boots on the ground. We're not trying to take over the country. Just bomb them into oblivion. That's all. But this guy, I can't. It's almost done. It's hard to listen to him, really, to tell you the truth. I've listened to this a couple times. It's just very, very aggravating. But his tactics and his verbiage and the things that he says, his behavior is very similar to the left. And the things that he's saying are exactly what those people that were coming after me last weekend, that were the anti-Semites and the isolationists and the fake conservatives, it's exact language that they said. That's why some of them have Tucker Carlson's pictures on their profiles on Twitter and are spewing this stuff. The only thing Tucker hasn't said is that he hates Israel. Other than that, he said everything that they said. We'll finish it up.
You've earned my trust through years of lying to me. That appears to be our position now. Now, maybe all this will turn out.
That's all you really got to hear. What he just said, I'm going to play it one more time.
Fine on the basis of your anonymous, unverified leak to the New York Times. You've earned my trust through years of lying to me.
I think that pretty much sums up the way I feel about Tucker. He's saying that about the intel community, but I actually think that we could pretty much say that about Tucker Carlson and many people in the media. Many people that are behind the scenes in media. They're perpetuating these lies. They're allowing non-experts to come in, and they're putting them on a pedestal, giving them a voice, and lo and behold, if you do any research on them, which you should if you run Fox News and you know Tucker Carlson's show, you should be looking at what some of these people are writing that support Tucker, that are associated with the Daily Caller, which Tucker owns part of, the vast majority of. And you'll start to see that he is doing exactly what he's accusing other people of doing, which is faking it and then telling people that, oh, I'm conservative and this is the truth and yada, yada, yada. And slowly, like a little pecking away with like archaeologists do with a little brush and a little bitty hammer, and they slowly dig a big giant hole around a dinosaur bone. That's what this guy's doing. Except it's not a dinosaur. It's your version. It's your vision of reality. He's slowly chipping it away, making you believe that he's conservative and that he's smart and that he knows all these things and that the experts that he brings on know more than you do. It's not true. It's absolutely not true. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to end it right here. And the next episode, I'm going to bring in my good buddy Drago. I don't know if you know who Drago is. I had him on my show before on The Experts. And Drago is a retired Navy SEAL that was from Poland, actually. And he was held in a communist prison for several years for helping out with the Freedom Underground to try to overthrow the communist regime there. And he was held there and released because Pope John Paul got involved, got him released. He came to the United States, became an American citizen, and then the day he became an American citizen, he enlisted in the Navy, became a SEAL, and served for 20 years. Now he's a father and an amazing guy, and he just started a new online social media platform called Connect Zing. It's all one word. It's like a Facebook killer. So go ahead and join that, and there's no censorship. So you can go in there and say what you want to say and post what you want to say, and they're not going to shut you down. I'm sure there's some guidelines, but overall, if you're conservative, you're not going to be shut down there. Go check it out, Connect Zing. And don't forget, the song that you heard at the beginning and the song that you hear at the end, you can go and look on iTunes, look for Burnos, B-U-R-N-O-S, and that's Octane. She's amazing, Melissa Burnos, and that song is amazing, and all her songs are incredible. Go check her out on iTunes. And you know what, folks? We're just going to call it there. And I can't thank you. I hope you listened to the whole show. I hope it was interesting and insightful. And there's going to be more of this. It's not just going to be me talking. We're going to bring people on. We're going to have incredible conversations. We are going to bring to you the one thing that's been missing in media for a long time. And you know what that is. It's what I always bring. It's the truth. So, stay with me. When the next episode comes out, I'm going to announce it on social media so you'll know. Eventually, you're going to be able to find this on everything, iTunes, everything, and you'll be able to download it. The truth is the objective, folks. And just remember, wherever you see this face, wherever you hear this voice, whenever you turn this podcast on, I guarantee you, folks, that the truth has arrived. I'm Jonathan Gillum. I'll see you next time on The Experts. Peace.
You just got the truth. Peace out.